My name is Div Bensali. I'm a vice president with AccountantsWorld. And joining us today is Tyler Winn, CPA. He's based out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Tyler, welcome to today's webinar.
Thanks for having me, Div.
Absolutely. So Tyler is going to be talking about how he's grown his payroll practice using Streamline processes and our Payroll Relief solution. I wanted to just briefly talk about what we're going to be covering in this webinar today. We have two primary goals today. Number one is to learn how a practicing CPA has benefited from payroll relief in his payroll practice, and how he's streamlined his processes to grow his practice. And number two, for those of you who are already payroll relief customers, we want to provide you with ideas and inspiration to grow and improve your practice. Two other quick things I want to mention here before we get started. If you look under the handouts tab, you're going to see a PDF called The Major Benefits of Using Payroll Relief. So that's a features and benefits document that you can download for future reference. You don't have to do it right now. We're not going to be going through that during this presentation, but at any time you can go ahead and download that. And we can also send that to you afterwards if you don't get a chance to download it. Also, we have Roger Batista on the line. He's also with AccountantsWorld. If you have any questions about payroll relief during the webinar, feel free to write them in. You don't need to wait until the end of the webinar. You can send them in anytime, and Roger will do his best to go ahead and answer those as they're coming in. If you have questions for Tyler as well, feel free to write those in at any point. Those we'll probably get to at the end of the presentation today. Also, I should mention, sometimes I have audio issues briefly with my connection here. So in case that happens, Roger will step in and pinch hit for me until I get my audio back. So at this point, Tyler, could you tell us a little bit about your background and where you are and how you've come to do what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So as it says there on the slide, I am a licensed practicing CPA, but payroll is all we do. I got my accounting degree from Hillsdale College in Hillsdale, Michigan, and actually started out in public accounting. So working for a big four firm. I worked for Deloitte for a couple of years, and then moved back here to Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is where we are based, and where I was born and raised. After I worked for Deloitte, I worked for kind of an internal audit consulting firm for a couple of years. So I got a pretty well-rounded experience, I think, in in the accounting world. Also did some small business accounting, and just kind of always had an itch to get out there and do my own thing, but I wasn't really sure, what that was going to be. But what happened was I was actually doing some bookkeeping work on the side on a volunteer basis for my church, for a couple nonprofits, and realized that I was, enjoying kind of working with small organizations, small businesses, and helping them, streamline their processes and do things right. So initially, I saved up some money, and I quit my job and started doing bookkeeping, and things kind of snowballed from there, but I can probably get into that later. So yeah, that's kind of a basic overview. Div, do you want me to go ahead and jump into kind of how I got into payroll from there, or should we wait on that?
Yeah, that was going to be my next question to you. So if you can talk a little bit about why you decided to focus on payroll, and what was your vision or what you wanted from your payroll practice when you started out?
Yeah, so I started out doing some bookkeeping and accounting for small businesses, and what I found, and my initial goal actually was to grow that, eventually hire a tax person, and since I was a CPA, I just thought I would kind of grow it into a traditional CPA firm. That seemed like the logical path. What actually happened was I had my bookkeeping clients came to me. They were working with really with paychecks, and they weren't enjoying their experience. They were having communication issues, having trouble with their payroll reps continually turning over, nobody really knowing who they were. So they came to me and said, "Hey, you're doing our accounting. Why don't you, we know you, we like you, we have good communication with you. Why don't we just have you do our payroll?" I wasn't offering it at the time, but that's what prompted me to go out and look for, a payroll platform that could work. I was using QuickBooks, so I wanted something that integrated with QuickBooks, and I knew I wanted something cloud-based. But beyond that, that was kind of all I knew at the beginning. But yeah, basically the way I got into this was just by happenstance. I had clients that had a need, and I, decided to fill that need, and ended up really falling in love with payroll. And over the course of the next few months, I realized, I was enjoying Payroll Relief, enjoying the process, building the business, and I actually let the bookkeeping clients go, just to focus full time on payroll. So, yeah, that's kind of how it happened.
And so when you started to make that decision to really focus on payroll, what were some of the concerns that you had at that point, or what challenges did you expect to face when you started to do that?
I think I had a lot of the same concerns that most people that start a new business have. There's always questions in the back of your mind is if can I succeed at this? Are people going to want the service that I'm offering? Also just knowing that, even though I knew I could offer better service than a Paychex or an ADP or, one of the national providers, they have the name recognition. So why would somebody work with some young guy that's, just out here saying that he can do what these guys can do, but, he has some accounting experience, but why would, why would they choose me? And I think that's the same fear that a lot of people have in any business, but in payroll, I think it's tough because it is a competitive market. There's the national players, there's the regional players, and there's usually a local established player in every, mid-market to major, city in the United States. So there was that, but I knew I could bring something different to the table than anybody else was getting because of my background working with small businesses, being a CPA, being able to bring a higher level of service. And, I just had, I think, just enough confidence to think that I could sell that and grow a business over time.
Mm-hmm. And I think that gets to the last bullet point on here, which it sounds like in terms of the competitive advantages you felt like you could bring to the marketplace, it's a combination of your experience and your ability to provide a much more intimate level of service than the big guys could provide. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean, beyond just the expertise. So, when I would go into meetings or consultations with prospects, they could just sense right away that I wasn't just a payroll sales guy that didn't really understand what I was talking about. I would ask intelligent questions about their business, about how their entity was structured, things that other, the larger payroll companies aren't really diving that deep, unfortunately, to getting to know, because they've got a lot on their plate and they're trying to kind of churn and burn. So there was that, and then I knew that I was gonna be in it for the long haul, and I could tell people, hey, if you work with me, I'm your contact. Like, I'm the one you're going to be talking to. Here's my cell phone number if you need to talk. Text me, call me, whatever. It's not going to be the experience that you've had where you don't really, if you have an 800 number that you're calling, you're talking to somebody different every time, or just by the time you get to know your payroll rep, they're gone and somebody's replaced them.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So let's talk a little bit about as you were starting up and as you've continued on, what you've done in terms of, excuse me, gaining new clients. Can you walk me through how you got your very first client or several clients? How did that process happen?
Well, the first couple happened just because I was doing the accounting, piece for them anyway. And so they were ready to move away from their current provider. So that was a fairly easy sell for me because I already had the relationship. I think that's honestly, if I could just make a sidebar here, I'm sure there's a lot of accountants on the call that aren't doing payroll right now, but you have existing relationships with, your small business client. So if payroll is something you decide to jump into, you're in a even much better position than I was in, because I was just starting out. I just had a handful of clients. There may be people on the call that have dozens of clients, and you already have that relationship. So it should be pretty easy to get your foot in the door on payroll. But beyond that, it was just, to grow my client list. The first 2 were easy, and the next 10 were probably the hardest, that I had to work for, because again, at the time, I wasn't really a known quantity in my community. So, it really just getting out there and grinding it out, joining networking groups, getting involved in chamber events. There's no magic bullet, and there's an online piece to what you do. Of course, I had a website and LinkedIn profile and all that stuff, but in my town, Tulsa's it's a good sized city. It's not huge, but people buy based on relationships here. So I knew that I needed to get out and get my face out, get my card out, let people know who I was. And eventually over time, I knew I was to build trust. And then also being a CPA, this was kind of an interesting, unique thing about me is, I have contacts with a lot of other CPAs and financial professionals that don't really want to do payroll, don't have any interest in it, and probably never will. It's just not where they're at. And they knew, hey, this is, Tyler's a CPA and he's only doing payroll. So I could send my payroll business to him because he's not gonna compete with me. Mm-hmm. He's not gonna try to take the tax and accounting business away from me. So it's a pretty easy referral. So I would say the local networking, getting my name out, just doing the grind, doing what you got to do. That was half of it. And then the other half was mining referral relationships with other financial professionals. And that's pretty broad. I mean, that could be insurance agents, bankers, other accountants, attorneys. There's a variety of people that are talking to small business owners that need payroll, and they don't offer it, but they're going to know about the need first. And so if they know you and trust you, it's a good chance you're going to get that referral.
Mm-hmm. And I want to just go back and sort of piggyback on something you just said before about going to other accountants who are not offering payroll services, and they won't feel threatened by you because you're not competing directly with them. And this is something we've heard from at AccountantsWorld. We've heard this from many Payroll Relief customers, that they develop those sorts of mutually beneficial non-compete relationships with other accountants. Mm-hmm. Accountants get accountants. They understand each other well. And as long as they know you're not going to be competing for the same services with the same clients, that's usually one of the best ways you can get really, really strong referrals there. Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about your sales presentation. I would imagine that you're going in to do a sales presentation and you're faced with somebody who's using ADP or Paychex, or even if it's somebody smaller, and they're thinking, why should I go through the pain of a switch? There's inertia that probably leads them to stay with what they have, even if they're not very happy. How do you overcome that?
Our approach with any prospect is to take a consultative, question asking kind of position, make it conversational. So when I go in and talk to anybody, it's usually one of two things. One, they're a startup, and they've either been referred to us, or we're in a list of people that they're getting quotes from. The situation you're talking about, is just as common, where we've got somebody that has an established payroll service, but they're looking to switch for one reason or another. And what I found in my experience is people will put up with a lot of crap before they'll switch. And it's kind of unfortunate, the abuse that some clients will take before they finally have had the last straw and start calling around looking for somebody else. So when I get into those conversations and someone's reached out to me, and my first stance is to just try to understand what their current process is, what's been going right, what's been going wrong, and then see if I can apply the solution. We're not the perfect fit for everybody, and sometimes they come out of these meetings and I may tell them, hey, maybe you should work with this service instead. It's rare, but it happens. But what I try to do is really help them understand that they don't have to put up with it anymore. there is an alternative out there in us that, you know, we can fix the problem, and it's not going to happen again. So just as an example, we brought on a client earlier this year that they had multiple problems with their payroll service, but the problem that put them over the edge, and this just shows you how egregious the problems have to be sometimes. It's a blue collar painting company. One of their employees got a $90,000 direct deposit on a weekly payroll, just one of their painters, and that was the thing that set them off. So obviously that should make anyone start looking around for another service. But I deal with these kind of things, so I try to understand, how did that happen? What were the mistakes that were made? Try to apply the solution. And then, you know, the biggest thing is helping people understand that switching is not hard. We make it super easy for people, and I try to help them understand that up front, because they think it's going to be weeks and weeks and weeks and tons of reports and paperwork and all this stuff. Really, it's signing a service agreement. It's filling out a couple pieces of paperwork that let us debit their bank account and file their returns. And then if they're with a payroll service that has an online platform, we've dealt with almost all of them. So we just say, hey, if you'd be willing to share your login with us, obviously if you're going to work with us anyway, you trust us already. So if you'll share your login, we can get 95% of the information we need. Employee data, direct deposit accounts, prior payroll data, all the registers. We can probably find your tax account IDs in there, and then we'll just follow up with you for the rest. So I think that's the main, when people are getting abused and are having problems, that's the main objection I have to overcome, is their fear that this is going to be a time-consuming project for them, when really we walk them through step by step. And like I said, we're doing 90 to 95% of the heavy lifting on the transition anyway.
Great. Let's talk a little bit about hiring a sales rep. Can you give me some specifics on how you hired a sales rep and how you compensate that person?
Yeah, so this is really new for us. So, you know, I'll just be honest, we're trying something out, something new out here as far as like a compensation structure. So we've been in business for 5.5 years. I've done all the sales and marketing up until this year. And when we finally, you know, I decided it's time to duplicate myself. I'm not out there mining the local market like I should be. So it's time to bring on a team member that can do that. So we hired Allison back in June. She's been doing a great job. But as far as the compensation structure, you know, what we do is we pay a base salary, and then I've set up a kind of a 2-part commission. So when she brings on a new client, and we run their first payroll, and it triggers 2 different parts of the commission. One is a one-time commission. I think it's called a spiff, you know, in the sales world. But we basically take a percentage. We look at the annual revenue that's going to come in for the year, and we take 2 months of that and just pay her that on her next paycheck, just as a thank you for bringing this new client on. So there's that, and then there's also a second piece, and that's a recurring revenue piece, where as long as the client stays with us, and it's a client that she brought on, she's going to get a percentage of that revenue until the day the client leaves us or goes out of business. So what that does is that, you know, hopefully incentivizes someone to want to stay long term, because, you know, that's what I want. I want somebody that believes in what we're doing and wants to stick around, you know, for several years at least. What that does is that gives a huge earning potential. You know, in year 5 or 6, if you're hitting targets, you can be making 6 figures, and then it goes up from there. So, and it's a win-win. I'm happy to pay that, because this person is helping me grow my business, making me more profitable. Why would I not reward them, you know, likewise? So that's kind of how we structured it. We're very new into it, but I think over the long term it's going to work well, and that allowed me to hire somebody up front. I will say that I think some people think I can't hire a salesperson until I can pay somebody 70, 80, you know, even $100,000 a year for some heavy hitter that's going to come in and just start closing deals left and right. I couldn't afford that. I couldn't afford to bring in somebody like that. So this kind of structure gives you a way to bring somebody on now and then scale up over the course of a few years.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of your what you're able to offer to a sales rep there, it sounds like you're able to offer both a short-term win in terms of each sale that they're closing, but also there's that benefit in the long term, and that keeps them interested in retaining that client, doing what they can to sort of align their goals with your goals as well.
Exactly. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So we're going to talk in just a minute about how you started doing payroll in some other states and about testimonials as well. I want to give you a couple of quick hit questions that have come in here if you can answer those. One was, does Tyler charge to make the transition to his payroll service?
Was I charged to?
So do you charge clients to help them make that transition to your service?
Okay, so like a setup fee for a new client. You know, we have a you know, kind of a structure for calculating a setup charge, but we waive it almost every single time because I don't want there to be any barrier to someone coming on. I don't, you know, they're going to come on, and the average life of a payroll client, you know, especially because with us, they're being treated so well, they don't want to leave. So you're talking about bringing somebody on, it's going to be a multi-year relationship. So why do I care about making a couple $100 on the front end when this is going to be profitable over the course of the next few years? So I very, very rarely charge a setup fee.
Okay, great. And then one other quick one, and the other folks who've asked questions, we'll definitely get to those in a little bit as well. But do you have a minimum number of employees per firm that you bring on?
No. So I tell people, I don't care how small you are, we'll take you on. We've got, you know, our smallest payrolls are, you know, quarterly owner-only payrolls. They pay themselves once a quarter. And, you know, we get them paid, we file the quarterly returns, then we issue their W-2 at year end. There's no reason to turn somebody like that away because you're still making money, and honestly, it's pretty easy to deal with. And these are the kind of people that fall through the cracks of the other payroll services. So I want to help these kinds of people because they're not going to get any personal attention anywhere else. So yeah, I always tell somebody there is no client too small for us to bring on.
Great. So you mentioned that you started your business with local clients. I understand that you've now expanded to doing payroll in other states as well. Are you concerned when you start doing payroll in a new state, and what are some of the issues that you might have to deal with at that point?
Yeah. So, you know, we're probably running payroll, and it can fluctuate, but probably 20 to 25 states in total right now. Now, I'm not saying we have huge client bases in all those states. Honestly, in some of them, we have one client. But I mean, it runs the game. I mean, we're running West Coast to East Coast and all the way up and down. So for us, it's a mindset of, you know, we're not afraid to take on a new state because we view it as a learning opportunity to get to know how another state operates. I personally kind of geek out about it. I think it's fun to figure out what the state's requirements are, what their, you know, what kind of online access they provide. And what we've done, you know, since the beginning, because I knew even when it was just me, you know, I read a book called The E-Myth, which was really, really helpful, kind of a foundational book for me, that was talking about, you know, even when it's just you as the owner, build the manual. So when it was just me, I was mapping out, you know, if I got a new state, I would go in there and say, okay, what's the process for setting up electronic filing? What's the process for setting up electronic payments? How do I register a new account in this state? How do I close a payroll tax account in the state if the client, you know, leaves the state or goes out of business? So over the course of 5 years, basically we have kind of a knowledge base that's been built up. So if someone, you know, the first time bringing a client on in a new state, you're learning a lot, you're doing the best you can, but at that point we've built the knowledge base. So when we bring the second client on from that state, it's no biggie. We know exactly what to do. So that's kind of how we've handled it. But to me, it's exciting. I like to figure out new states, and Payroll Relief can handle all of them. So there's no limit.
And I think I mentioned at the beginning how you've really focused on trying to streamline your processes. For all of you listening in right now, I think this is a really big one. Is Tyler's found a way to sort of productize every new state that he does. So obviously there are going to be exceptions and specifics that he needs to learn the first time around, but he is institutionalizing those so that the second client is much, much easier, and the third client and so on. And I think that just really boosts the efficiency. And as you mentioned, Payroll Relief can handle all the states, so that there's no software limitations that are happening there. So if you can control your processes, the software is there to handle it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about testimonials, and this is really pretty amazing. I'm going to go ahead and pull up here a view. And Tyler, are you seeing the web page in front of you?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So folks, this is Tyler's testimonials page, and so you come to it, and you've got three nice-looking people there, and really nice things that they're saying about Cirrus Payroll. But then what you notice is this goes on and on and on. And just in case you're wondering if some of these are just filler quotes, they are not. I've read every single one. They are amazing. So Tyler, obviously the question we've got to ask here, there's even more here. The question we've got to ask is, what is your process to get all of these amazing testimonials? How did you do it?
Yeah, well, I mean, the keyword is process. So you don't get that many testimonials just by randomly asking people, here and there for one. We have a very mapped out onboarding process, step-by-step tasks to make sure everything gets done and clients get onboarded correctly. Toward the back end of that checklist is actually a reminder for me. After we run the first payroll, I set a reminder 1 month out. And I use an email reminder service called Nudge Mail, NUDGE Mail. And I email it 1 month at nudgemail.com, and the subject line says request review from, whatever the name of the client is that we just brought on. So a month later, that shows back up in my email. I can forget about it at that point. A month later, that email pops back up in my inbox and it reminds me to ask for the review. So I have a canned email template. It sounds personal, and I am sending them individually, but I then send an email to that client, and I ask them if they'd be willing to write us a review. The reason I wait a month is because someone told me when I was first getting started, kind of shared this wisdom with me. He said, a month into having a new client is probably when they're going to love you the most, because you've probably saved them from some situation that they weren't real pleased with before. And that you've usually got a couple payrolls under your belt. So sometimes the first one can be a little bit bumpy. It is the first one. After the second one, things have pretty much smoothed out. So that's why I wait a month. And then within that email that I'm sending asking for the review, I don't just ask them, hey, can you go out and write a review, on Google? Like I say, here's the steps. 1, click this link, and that link takes me directly to the page. It pops out my reviews on Google, and I tell them, click the button that says write a review. And then I say, give us 5 stars and let us know what you think, smiley face, whatever. And I send that out. But that's not the last thing I do, because I don't get a very good response rate on that first email. I then wait 3 or 4 business days, and I send myself another reminder. And then I do a quick friendly follow-up and just say, hey, I promise I'm not going to pester you about this again, but if you'd like to write a review for us, it would, it'd really make my day. And that's when I get the hit. That's usually when most people go out and write it, because they just need a little extra nudge to go do it. So I've done this process with pretty much every client that we've ever brought on. And that's how I've been able to build up this database of testimonials.
Yeah, it's great, and I'll just say I come from a marketing background. That's what I do at AccountantsWorld as well. And when I saw the testimonials and then the impact that has, it made me want to weep tears of joy. I mean, this is what any small business should be doing, having an institutionalized process to make testimonial gathering as easy as possible for clients. And I want to show you what the impact of this has been for Tyler's business. So if you go on Google and you Google in payroll in Tulsa, there's 3 ads. Those are paid for. And then you get to the real meat of it, which is a map and then the first couple of listed providers. And for any small business, including accounting firms and payroll practices, this is where you want to be. You want to be in the top 2 or 3 listed here, because then you're actually shown on the map. That makes you about 50% more likely to get clicks. Now, comparing these two here, Southwestern Payroll Services listed first. They've been in business for 58 years, I checked. Tyler, how long have you been in business?
A little over 5.
Little over 5 years, so about 11, 12 times as long Southwestern has been, and they've only got 3 reviews on here, and their average 3.7 stars, which I think everyone would agree is not incredibly impressive. Tyler's business, 60 ratings on here and a 5.0 average. So obviously, a customer or a potential customer comes out to here, sees that, that really boosts the likelihood that they're going to go ahead and click through to Cirrus Payroll and find more there. So, so we see here what you're doing in the front end process in terms of getting clients started up and then getting testimonials from them in exactly the right time. It is absolutely paying off here in real world marketing and in getting your next set of clients as well. So I think that's really impressive stuff there.
Yeah, and I'll just give a quick example of how that's paying off.
Yeah.
Again, that's a long-term thing. So I didn't think I'm going to get 5 reviews out there and then I'm going to clients are just going to start banging my door down. I've done this over the course of years, and it's just been that consistency of asking every time. And just as an example of how that's paid off, just this morning, I met with a CPA and his client. He just found us by Googling. His client needed a payroll service. He wasn't really happy. I mean, he told me, I don't really want to send him to Paychex. I don't want to send him to the other local guys. I've not really had a great experience with them, but I found you. And he referred his client, and he didn't even give him options. He just said, Cirrus Payroll, this is who you should call. This is who you should work with. And so those reviews like sold us 90% of the way. And then we just had to have a conversation to close the deal. And now I've got potentially a new source of referrals because this guy's impressed with us. And hopefully, I think that will reap benefits over time.
Yep. Then it has a multiplier effect when you get one of those. So, yep, that's great. All right, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the role that Payroll Relief has been playing in your practice. So you've been using Payroll Relief for a while now. Tell me about that decision. Why did you decide to use it in the first place?
So, I mean, there's a couple major reasons. One, I knew I wanted a cloud-based, online, browser-based system to do payroll in, because I wanted the flexibility of being able to work from where I wanted to work. So whether it's from home or, from a coffee shop on a secure connection, I didn't want to be tied down to a server in an office somewhere. That was just personally for me, that was very important. The other reason I chose Payroll Relief is just I could just see the simplicity of it. Simplicity is it's a core value for our company. We try to simplify wherever we can. And it's just an easy, intuitive platform to navigate around. It's not overly complicated. You don't look at it and go cross-eyed, which honestly, most payroll softwares will do that to you. So I liked that. And then it was priced in a way that I could kind of get in on the ground floor, even when I didn't have, very many clients to speak of. There wasn't some huge upfront license fee. I've talked to some payroll companies and their license fee is, 10 grand all the way up to, I've heard 40 grand quoted as a license fee for a payroll software. That doesn't exist with Payroll Relief. So being a startup, I was able to start small. I could afford it, and then I knew over time I could scale that way. So those are kind of at least a few of the, there were a lot more things that went into it, but those are some of the big ones.
Yeah, and these are the benefits that we hear over and over again from Payroll Relief customers. The fact that it's fully cloud-based and was built for the cloud from the ground up, the ease of use, it makes practices much more accessible to excellent remote employees. And you've talked about Payroll Relief scalability and being able to start small. What was so that sort of talks, and we'll talk later on about the cost of payroll relief and how we make it affordable for the first year and then beyond that as well. Let's talk a little bit about on the other side, on the revenue side. How did you start in terms of your pricing structure? I know we've had a couple of people write in about what you're doing in terms of pricing. How did you think through your pricing structure?
Again, I mean, the main thing I wanted to do was just keep it simple. I wanted the client to very easily understand what they were getting billed for, because I had seen invoices from some competitors, and I was like, I'm in this industry, and I honestly, I don't understand what they're being charged for, how this rate's being calculated. I didn't want there to be any fuzziness, any gray areas. I didn't want people to ever think I was nickel and diming them or, you know, kind of two-timing them or whatever. So the way that from the get-go that I've structured it, and Payroll Relief, you know, accommodates this very well, is a base fee per payroll, and then an incremental, you know, a small incremental amount per check. We have different base rates depending on if it's a weekly, you know, a bi-weekly or semi-monthly, or a monthly payroll, or even a quarterly payroll. So, you know, those rates can change depending on the pay frequency, but really it's just those two parts. It's the base fee, and then we charge $3 per check on top of the base fee. I think it really depends on people's market. You kind of have to get a feel for where other companies are pricing, but I will say this: I never, ever, 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 ever compete on price. I never come in and say we can do this for cheap. Or because what you've done is you say that and you diminish your quality right off the bat in the perception of your prospect. So I usually tell people, I say, we are not the cheapest. We're not even average. We're a little above average on our pricing, but our service will blow you away. And you will be glad that you paid a few more dollars a month to get the kind of service that we can provide. So, and then, you know, the only other piece of really, I mean, there's a couple other just random things that we have to bill for sometimes, like if we set up a general ledger, you know, for somebody. But the only other fee is at year end we charge for W-2s, and that's just a base fee of $50 and then $5 per W-2. So, and that's very standard. You know, most payroll services charge something like that. But I know I mentioned paychecks a few times, and I don't want to rag on them too hard. But they actually are very helpful for me because they're about the highest price, at least where I live. I don't know about other places, but we come in usually 10 to 15% cheaper than them. So I can honestly use them as kind of a bellwether of, like, you know, where is the high end payroll at, and then I just go a little bit, you know, under that, and it allows us to be very, very profitable. And again, sell on value, sell on service, and do not sell on price. Do not sell on being cheap. Way too common. It's kind of my soapbox.
Absolutely. I would guess that there are more new payroll practices that underprice than that overprice, and I think there's a fear that I won't be able to get clients, I won't be able to compete with ADP and Paychecks. But number one, obviously, you've got to get the margins working for you, and number two, it sets an expectation of the level of quality that you're going to deliver, as you mentioned. And so if you're competing on quality, you have to price accordingly there.
Yep.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about some of the features that you use in Payroll Relief. Let's start with the payroll snapshot. So this is a snapshot of all of your clients here. You can display and sort by various filters and criteria here. Over on the right-hand side, there's a next tax due date, and you'll see an item highlighted in yellow there. Tell me a little bit about how you use the tax due date column in Payroll Relief.
Yeah, so I mean, this snapshot screen is like the go-to screen. I think my payroll manager, Christina, is on the call, so shout out to her. But this is like where she manages, you know, her daily, you know, this is where she logs in and can see where all of our clients are at. You know, if the payroll needs to be processed today, when the next tax is due. It's just a nice overview. You don't have to keep a separate Excel spreadsheet or pen and pad by you and write down whose payroll do I need to process today. You can just go to the screen and look. So the next tax due date is, I mean, almost all the taxes are being paid by AccountantsWorld through their ACH, structure. So we just check this next tax due date screen to make sure, a due date isn't approaching where it doesn't seem like it's getting paid electronically. That can happen. Usually that happens with a new client where, sometimes you have to register with the state to get it set up for paying taxes electronically. And sometimes we're waiting on information from the client to get that done, a form to get signed or whatever. So I trust in the back of my mind that all the taxes are getting taken care of by AccountantsWorld. But this screen helps us if a tax due date is approaching, that triggers in our minds, okay, wait, I think this client was somebody that's not set up for electronic payments yet. So we can go in and, pay that another way. We can pay it, have the client write a check, or, we can log into their online account with the state and get it paid. So, I mean, we don't really deal with late taxes because those kind of reminders are there so that we know ahead of time.
Yep. Great. And by the way, I meant to ask you this question before this slide, but since we're talking about sort of streamlining and becoming more efficient here, how many employees do you have who help you with your payroll operations?
One. So it used to be, I mean, I know the system frontward and backward just because, it was just me for the first 3 or 4 years. But like I said, I've got a payroll manager that she's the main interface with the client. She's going in there and making sure payroll's getting processed. She's actually doing all the onboarding, any account closure she's handling. She's really doing most of the day-to-day stuff, and then just loops me in on, if something weird happens, and I need to step in and make some kind of a judgment call. But she's doing all of it. Now I am a backup, so if she got sick or want to take, she takes time off, and I can fill in, and basically just jump in where she left off, and I can process the payrolls and talk to the clients and do all that. So Allison does sales exclusively. She's not in here processing payrolls. So I don't think I mentioned this, but we have, we're continuing to grow, but we have 170 small business payroll clients, and they're all in Payroll Relief. And Christina is able to manage them. Now she's a rock star, I'll be honest, but she manages it with ease. And I don't see that I'm going to need to hire somebody for, I don't know, and maybe a couple of years before I need to hire somebody, because our processes are super efficient and we have good people. And I will say this, pricing pricing for quality is what has allowed me to, attract and retain people that I can pay a good salary to, that will stick around and that are super efficient and hardworking and can do this kind of work. That allows me as a business owner to run this thing very lean.
Mm-hmm. So 170, you said 170 small business clients? Is that right?
I think that's, yeah, close to that.
Yeah. 170 and one full-time rock star. That is really amazing. That is definitely the efficiency that we were talking about before. Shall we go ahead to employer permissions here?
Sounds good.
Okay. So here is the employer permission screen. This allows you to define the amount of access that you want to give to every single client in terms of what they can see and do in the Payroll Relief system as well. How much do you share with your clients, Tyler, and how do you decide how much to share with your clients?
So it's changed since I started. I used to honestly just open up the reports, and that's pretty much it. I had this like kind of irrational fear of giving clients access to the system because I knew that they might screw something up, and so I didn't want them to be able to change anything. I've gotten over that, and honestly, it's been fine. Nothing horrible has happened by letting our clients go in, but we typically let them go in. We don't let them edit tax information or file any tax returns. So that, for us, that's completely off the table. I mean, that's our job as professionals to make sure that gets done right. So we give them access to reports, We give them access to employees to go in and, you know, edit demographic data, update pay rate, update direct deposits. If they have an accounting system that they want to integrate with, we'll usually open up the GL account there under the setup section, so they can, you know, if they add a deduction, you know, they can go in and set up the, you know, add the relevant account number, you know, QuickBooks or whatever that needs to flow into. And then we give them access to payroll entry and calculate paychecks and I think check printing. But we don't give them access to approve. And again, just that's personal preference. I feel like, you know, they can go and enter the payroll, preview it, have a look at it, but I don't want them pushing the final button. I feel like that's in our court. But the nice thing is that staff contact drop down at the top. If you select, you know, Christina, it would be a name under there for us, and my name is under there. So if you go down there and you select your staff that's running payroll, when the client is done entering payroll, they you know, say submit, then whoever is assigned there as a staff contact gets an email that says this payroll is ready to process. So then she can just log in and close it out, you know, do the final approvals that get the gears moving. So that's kind of how we've set it up. Again, it totally depends. Some people may feel comfortable like just letting a client, and again, you have to know the client and know that they're trustworthy and whatnot, but you can open up the system to them kind of however much you want. So there it is.
Yep, still here. Can you hear me? Okay. Sorry, I just cut out for a couple of seconds there. Yeah, and to your point at the end there, no two clients are the same, and no two payroll practices are the same. We've got customers who are very, very restrictive in terms of client access across the board. We have customers who do it sort of as you do and define it on a client-by-client basis. And then we have customers who are very permissive and give a lot of the authority and control to their clients as well. So it depends on your clients, depends on how much you want to take on, the expertise of your staff and so on. But we offer that flexibility so you can define that however you want to there. Let's talk a little bit about payroll entry. Two quick things I'll mention on here. Well, one is I should mention that when you're doing the payroll entry for a new pay period, the default numbers are already in there from the previous period. Can you talk a little bit about how that helps you in terms of reducing the amount of time that your processor has to spend?
I mean, the main thing is that, well, first of all, we're actually having our clients use the screen and go in and enter the hours and calculate it and send it over. So the way that we've structured, you know, our processes is we don't key payroll in. I mean, it's very rare. I won't say we never do it, but we try not to. We try to give that to the client. And honestly, if you tell them that from the get-go, you don't really get pushback. People expect the need to enter their time, and they're happy that they have an online portal to do it in where they can preview the reports. It will pre-populate hours, so you can set that up. What it does is it drives efficiency for salaried employees. So you don't need to remember what their salary is or go in and rekey, you know, whatever regular hours calculates that salary. You can just pre-populate that in. So then at that point, you just, you know, the only thing the client would need to do is key in for hourly employees and then key in any kind of reimbursements or bonuses or deductions or whatnot.
Yeah, and I'll take this even broader here. Payroll Relief offers 3 different ways to do entry. The clients can call or fax, and you enter them. You can email a template to the clients that they can fill out, or you can give them access to the payroll entry scheme. And the key is that for all of these options, the defaults are already set, so you just work on the exception cases. So, for example, maybe instead of entering for 150 employees, you're only having to change entries for 5 employees based on whatever exception case might exist during that period. And that's how you can really minimize the staff that's needed, just like Tyler is on as well. So let's take a look at the compliance screen here. Looks like I just had a problem here and it's closed out for some reason. Let's go ahead and open that back up. Apologies, folks. I'm going to blame that one on Microsoft. Okay. Tyler, are you seeing the light screen in front of you?
I am. Yeah, and your audio's breaking up pretty bad. I can hear you, but if you want, I can just go ahead and talk about this screen.
Yeah, go ahead and talk, and I'll try to fix my audio.
Okay. Yeah, Tyler, go ahead and jump in on the Manage Compliance screen. I'm back in here. This is Roger, by the way. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, Roger. So this screen, I mean, you can see there's a variety of tabs, but during a compliance month, which I define as the month in which you are actually filing returns, which is generally about 4 months out of the year for each quarter, we're able to e-file return. Obviously, we e-file all the federal forms. We e-file state forms, quarterly forms, annual forms out of Payroll Relief with a click of the button. They usually go through with no problem. But the nice thing is, if we e-file it through Payroll Relief, I don't have to sit there and worry if it went through. If there's an issue with the file, honestly, a lot of times the issue is, hey, this file got submitted, but this person didn't have a Social Security number, so the state kicked it back, and now you need to fix that and re-e-file it. We don't. That's all managed on this screen. So first of all, when that kind of situation happens, we get an email notification from AccountantsWorld. So it's automatically it's in our court. We know something needs to be done. You can also go to the screen, like under Exceptions tab. You can run a report for a particular quarter and say, is there anything that the system is detecting that's weird in this file that may keep it from getting e-filed? So we go through and we clear all the exceptions before we do any quarterly reporting, and that usually fixes everything that needs to be fixed. And once we e-file, it's good to go. Unsuccessful e-file and rejected e-files, again, that's when you click the button, the system sends it, but the state rejects it for one reason or another. It'll show the rejection and a detailed reason of exactly what happened. So it usually takes a minute to go in and fix it. You go back into the client and you e-file again, and it's good to go. This managed taxes screen, we've just started using it. Honestly, we're kind of we're always looking to improve. This isn't a screen that we've used a ton, but I'm starting to see some of the benefits of it, where we can go in before we do quarterly filings and basically we would set the pay date. For this quarter, it would be July 1st through September 30th, and we'd view that and just see if there's any discrepancies between the federal liability and the federal payment. It should match, right? Because we're electronically paying all the taxes for all of our clients, so there shouldn't be any discrepancy there once we get, after the end of the quarter. So this is a nice just overview screen to make sure that everything is truing up before you start filing.
All right, great. So let's go ahead and take a look at the batch processing.
Divya, clear again.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you talk a little bit about how specifically you're using batch processing?
Yeah, we're using it creatively, I would say, for clients that aren't, their payroll never changes. Let's say they pay the same salary every 2 weeks to the owner, or we have probably a couple dozen clients that their payroll just doesn't really ever change. They don't have any hourly employees. So we used to ask them to approve payroll every single time, and it almost got embarrassing because they're like, yep, didn't change. Yep, didn't change again. And we just felt like we were pestering them. So what we did is we set up we drafted an auto processing agreement, which says, hey, we're going to run your payroll, automatically unless you give us, and it's all mapped out, the timing in the agreement, so they know, if they tell us too late, then it's already done and we'll do what we can to correct it. But we use this screen, we can go into pay schedules and enable the batch processing, and then we can go into this batch approval screen every day and basically see who are the clients that need to be processed today, who have a pay date, 4 days into the future. So we can just go in and go into each one and process it and be done. We don't have to talk to the client at all. So there's a lot of other things you can do with this screen. That's what we use it for, but I know that there's a lot of other batch processes as well within the system for W-2s and check printing and all that. So this is just kind of one small piece of what we use it for.
Yep. Roger, if you're over there, we just mentioned check printing and W-2s. Do you want to talk about some of the other things that can be batch processed from here as well?
Absolutely, yeah. We can't show everything on the screen, but I can talk a little bit about it. After you do your batch processing and you approve the payroll, then a whole bunch of things take place when you do the approval, as you know. You can then go on and do batch printing of the checks, and not only can you do batch printing of the checks, but you can actually select the customized set of reports that go out to the clients at the same time, if you want to do that. And you can choose from custom set reports and build a report set for each one of your clients. Your W-2s and your 1099s all can go into the cloud cabinet, of course, and they also go into the employee portal. Employees can give consent for electronic distribution of their W-2s, so they don't need to print the W-2s, and the program automatically knows which W-2s need to be printed and which don't. And at the same time, of course, you can do the e-filing, release them to the cabinet, or archive them to the cabinet, release them to the portal for the employees, and e-file them. And talking to clients, existing clients last year and wrapping up 2016 in January, many told me that they were saving an upwards of 40+ hours in the filing and handling of the W-2s at the end of the year. Additionally, there's one other really well-kept secret in there, and that's the client notification system that allows you to communicate and collaborate with your clients so that you can email them customize emails from you. They don't look like a mass distribution email. They look super personalized. And then we also generated AccountantsWorld a series of canned emails that you can utilize, and it has all the tokens already inserted, so that all you have to do is select which clients you want to send it to. Like, for example, I need to get the hours earlier because of upcoming holiday, and bingo, you are done. True productivity in the batch processing. Those are my 2 cents.
Tyler, I'm going to jump in with a quick question that's been asked by a couple of people here, which was, can you give an approximate breakdown of, in terms of your clients, what percentage you're printing the checks, what percentage your clients are printing the checks versus what percentage are direct deposit?
So the percentage of checks that we print and mail is 0. We are 100% paperless and have been from the very beginning. We don't mail, courier, send literally a single piece of paper to any of our clients. What Payroll Relief, the way it's built, has allowed us to do that, because the client, after a payroll's processed, they're actually able to print checks on site. It will generate a PDF that can be printed on, it can be printed, the whole check can be printed with Nicker ink on blank check stock. You can take, that standard 3-part QuickBooks check stock and pop that in the printer, and it will fill it out with the employee's name, net amount. It'll print a pay stub at the bottom. So when I go in to talk to a prospect and they are, used to having their checks printed and mailed to them, or even worse, if they are literally driving to their payroll service every other Friday and picking up their checks, which to me in this day and age, we should be way beyond that. 2017. So I just tell people, hey, we can generate a PDF. You have check stock in your drawer. After we process the payroll, usually on maybe a Tuesday for a Friday, that PDF is available for you to go in and print at your convenience. You don't have to wait for the mail to come. You don't have to worry about, Hurricane Harvey coming through and the Postal Service isn't going to be able to get, your checks delivered to you. You can just go in and you can print it on check stock and then just hand it to your employees and you're done. So that's what we have all of our clients do on the check printing.
Great. All right, and the last function we're going to talk about here, the last feature, ACH transactions, and this is something that you're using as well. Can you talk a little bit about how you're using this?
I mean, I'll just make a general comment about the ACH transactions. So I have dealt with several other payroll software programs kind of over the course of my career, and almost all of them require you to have a relationship, but with, a separate relationship besides the relationship with your payroll software company for ACH processing. So a lot of payroll softwares will, you process with payroll, but then it will generate an ACH file with the direct deposits, with the client debits, with the tax payments, and then you go to your payment processor, your ACH processor, and you go upload that file to them. And then they process everything. What that does is that brings all basically you need to have your own impound account for that. So you are basically bringing all this client money into your own account, and then it's also flowing out of your account to employees, tax agencies, et cetera. I can tell you firsthand that is a nightmare to deal with. First of all, it will keep you up at night because you literally have hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars of not your money. It's either the government or it's your clients or it's their employees sitting in your bank account. So I know for me that's just worrisome. What if somebody hacked my account, or what if a payment went out the wrong direction, or whatever. And it's a huge reconciliation nightmare. So to keep track of what tax payments have come in, which ones are sitting in your liability account, when they're getting paid, reconciling is almost, you would need to hire a full-time person just to keep that account reconciled and caught up. And I would say that most payroll services, it's really scary, but I would say most payroll services actually don't have their tax impound reconciled, or if it is, it's out of date. So what I love about Payroll Relief, and this is something that people don't think about, is that I don't do the ACH processing. I don't have to have a relationship with an ACH processor. AccountantsWorld has a relationship with their bank. They're doing all the money movement. So they're sending the debit to my client's accounts for the fees, for the direct deposit, for the taxes. And if something goes wrong, if there's an NSF, they try to debit the client's account and the money's not there, there are measures that have to be taken to protect everyone. But I get a notification of that. The client gets a notification about sending a wire in. All these kind of things AccountantsWorld is managing. And I can tell you, it really has saved me my sanity and probably the need to hire somebody else. So what this screen here does per client is show you all the ins and outs of all the debits that have been sent. None of this money is flowing through my company accounts. AccountantsWorld is doing this. But they still show this transparency of exactly what they've debited the client for, the date it was sent, the date it was settled. There's a trace number, and you can also see when the money went back out. And I can tell you, working with a new payroll software company, what we used to do is when a client would leave us, I'd actually take this report and put it into Excel and just make sure all the debits and credits matched, because I was just, in the back of my mind, I was still a little bit nervous. Did they move all the money correctly? And I did that for dozens and dozens of clients, not dozens, but I've probably done it for 20 clients. And the debits and credits always reconciled to a T. And I just stopped doing it because I trust that it's being done correctly. But this screen is really just transparency. And if a client ever has a question about, what a debit that hit my account on this date, this is usually a pretty good place to start to go in and research and answer those questions that they have.
Great. So I want to be sensitive to people's time here, and we've just got one summary slide here with you, Tyler, and then we're going to go through a little bit of information about Payroll Relief for those who are not yet Payroll Relief customers. We've talked about how Payroll Relief helps maximize your profits, but is there anything that we have missed, or anything you'd really like to emphasize in terms of what Payroll Relief is able to uniquely offer you in terms of maximizing your profitability?
I think we've hit the high notes, but it's a solution. And I know you'll get into the pricing, but people are going to see that it's an awesome platform to scale up on. You can start small and grow big. As far as, opportunities, I feel like we've been at it 5 years. I feel like we're really just getting started. And I feel like there's a ton of potential to keep growing because we have a high quality solution staffed by, really professional, friendly people. And we have the systems that we've built around this platform and within this platform that it provides that, the system's already there. It's really just a matter of how do we bring more people into this system and service them well, and our reputation should continue to grow. And I think, I'll be honest, I would like to see us have 1,000 clients in the system in another 5 years. And I think that's doable. And I think that I could probably do that maybe with 2 more hires, which is absurd. Honestly, that's absurd that I could handle 1,000 clients with three really high quality payroll people. So that's kind of where I see the road going.
That's absolutely amazing, and it's not unprecedented. We've got other customers who've done it as well, but obviously it's a tribute to how you're enforcing and then developing efficiency in your firm, because that's not something that everyone is able to get to. Certainly the software can help you get that, but you've got to have someone like Tyler who is constantly looking for ways to be more efficient and to serve clients based on quality as well. That's great stuff there. So I want to talk, well, actually, let's go ahead and do a poll question here. Let's see what you folks have thought about what Tyler has said here. So really simple question. Tyler has given me ideas that will help me grow my practice. Agree or not so sure? So select either yes or not so sure. And if we can go ahead and have everybody vote there so we can get a sense of if this has met your expectations, if this has provided you with information that is helpful to you moving forward, that would be great. And so we'll take about 10 more seconds here. We've got over 70% of people have already voted. That's great. Thank you. All right. Going once, going twice. All right, Tyler, good news, 87%. That's phenomenal. So thank you so much for all the information that you've provided today. I'm going to go through just here quickly, and as I mentioned before, if you've got questions for Tyler, you can go ahead and write those in. Tyler, can you still hear me right now?
Yes, I can.
Div, your audio is fine.
Did we lose Div?
Div, we see you switched over to the Payroll Relief pricing screen. But
here we go.
Okay, great.
All right, sorry about that, folks. Okay, so first year pricing, we have designed the first year pricing to really focus on helping you to grow and scale up in a way that isn't risky and that matches your business goals, as Tyler talked about before as well. So the key here is first year pricing is a flat fee for unlimited pricing. And so that first year all-inclusive flat fee is $1,495. That includes everything, unlimited processing, as many payrolls as you bring on board, no additional fees for W-2s or 1099s, no additional fees for e-file, EF, TPS, or state EFTs, no additional fees for direct deposits, and that also includes payroll relief support as well at no additional cost there. So our goal here is to give you a very, very comfortable price point to come in at so that everyone can go ahead and get their payroll practice moving in the right direction, whether you already have one or starting a new one, and make sure that you start to see results very, very quickly. Now, after the first year, it goes to a per paycheck system, and it's anywhere between 45 cents and $1.15 per paycheck. Again, it's all inclusive, no additional fees for W-2s, 1099s, direct deposits, or for support. Support is always included at no additional cost. So here's a breakdown of what the pricing looks like after the first year. And again, this does not apply to first year. The entire first 12 months is just $1,495. After the first year, it's a breakdown as you see here. So if you're doing fewer than 1,600 paychecks, you buy the 1,600 paycheck bundle, and that's going to be $1.15 per paycheck. But you see, as your business scales up, your cost per paycheck comes down dramatically here. And if you're doing 25,000 paychecks or purchasing 50,000 or 100,000, you're getting in below 60 cents per paycheck to as low as 45 cents per paycheck. So our goal is twofold. Number one, to help you to get in the door with Payroll Relief and begin to experience positive results on your bottom line immediately. And number two, as you scale up your business, as Tyler has done and as thousands of other payroll processors across the country have done, we want to be scaling with you and helping you to see more and more gains in efficiency and profitability as you continue on. If you have any other questions on our pricing, we're happy to answer those, and I'll provide the contact information in just a minute here. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and launch the second poll question, and that's simply about your intention here. I would like to get a one-on-one demonstration, and I should mention that one-on-one demonstration is not a canned demo. It's not a boilerplate demo. It is customized live for your needs. We've got a live representative who will be walking you through that, a live practice development consultant, and they'll be walking through exactly the features that are important to you and answering any questions that you have as well. So you can get a one-on-one demo of Payroll Relief. You can go ahead and take advantage of the first year special offer of $1,495. Or if you have questions that you'd like answered, please go ahead and indicate that, and we'll be happy to get back to you and answer any questions that you have there as well. So we'll take another 10 seconds or so here for people to go ahead and fill in how they'd like to proceed at this point. And we want to thank all of you for responding to this question and for your interest throughout the past hour. I see some questions still sitting in the pile here, and so we'll get through to some of those. Roger, some of those may be ones that you can answer offline, but Tyler, I know there are some that that are specifically for you, so we'll get to those in a minute. All right, so we're going on the poll here. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, leave the poll open a little while longer.
Okay, happy to do that.
Cool.
And let me see.
We have tons of questions. I don't know, we're not going to be able to get to all of them because there's some great questions there. So maybe you might want to pick some, and then we can always address the others. I can discuss them with Tyler offline, and we can get answers to some of you out there with the questions that you're asking Tyler.
Yep. One great question that came in was, do you pay any special attention to new clients who come on stream in the middle of the year?
Yeah, that always requires a lot of care because you need to make sure that what they've done to date is what is brought into your system. Payroll Relief has a special way of entering prior payrolls, and so for us, it's been a matter of gaining familiarity with our competitors' reports because we've brought people over from a variety of other services. We kind of know, if we bring somebody over from, our local competitor here, what reports do they have? What do they look like? What do we need? If we bring somebody over that's on, Intuit full service payroll, what do those reports look like? And again, that's something that we have documented, that accumulated knowledge. So we find out who they're coming from, and then then we know exactly what to ask for. But yeah, paying attention to making sure that all the prior payroll data is entered correctly, and then you have to confirm 100% what tax payments have been made and what liabilities are outstanding. And if they're made, those are easy to record in Payroll Relief. There's a payments made tab where you can record the payments that the prior service has made. If there's something the prior service hasn't made, and maybe they debit it from the client, but then they refund it when they cancel service, that's something that we help the client, with that to catch up that payment. So again, it's all a matter of having a process in place and knowing you know, we need to do this, and this to make sure that we don't miss anything, and so that this transition is smooth.
Great. So I'm going to go ahead here and close out the poll question in just 5 seconds. So folks, if you have not yet responded to the poll, please select one of those 3 options. Going once, going twice. Okay, so we'll go ahead and close that out. So I want to thank all of you for joining us today. And Tyler, I want to really give a special thanks to you for joining us today. This has been, I think, incredible, and the response in terms of questions and positive feedback has already been really, really great here. But thank you so much for sharing so many of the insights and lessons learned that you've had over the past 5 years. This has been really terrific.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Great. So Tyler, we may have 1 or 2 more questions coming in here for you. If anybody's got any final questions, please go ahead and write those in on the questions tab. If you have questions for us at Payroll Relief, you can reach us at 888-999-1366. To learn more about Payroll Relief online, go to AccountantsWorld.com/PR for Payroll Relief. And if you'd like to connect with us on social media, best place to go is on LinkedIn. So if you're on LinkedIn, just go on LinkedIn and in the search tab, just type in AccountantsWorld, all one word. There are over 40,000 followers who've already done that and are following us. We provide updates and tips for you to grow your accounting and payroll practices, and all sorts of other goodies for firms as well. So please follow us there to keep up to date on what's happening in your industry and in our company as well. So thanks again to everyone for joining us today. If you have questions that are still outstanding, we'll try our best to get to those here. And thanks again for joining us.